pleasure to be with you as we embark on this journey for a home makeover. As mentioned, this is based on Mark Holman's book, Faith Begins at Home. Now, you want to get a copy of this book because a lot of the information that we will be talking about during this time is included in the book, plus a lot of information that we're not going to be able to touch on. Some of the things you'll find in the book are family activities, for example. There will be a summary of home makeover tips, and then there's a discussion guide as well, so you can get together with some friends and talk about some of these things and think about how you're going to help each other with a home makeover. Well, we want to begin on this journey, and some of the things that we are excited to share with you is how your home can be the primary place where faith is nurtured and lived out as God intended it to be. But also, we're going to be talking about a parent makeover. We're going to be talking about a child makeover. Be sure and catch us for that one. And we're going to be talking about an extended family makeover, like grandparents and others that are part of your kids' lives. And we're going to be talking about a church makeover. What part does the church have to play in this faith development of your family and with your kids? Well, there's lots that we're going to be discussing. And as we start, our guest is Mark Holman. And Mark, I would like to begin with you with where it all started. And by that, Mark, I mean where it all started for you as a dad. Take us back, if you can remember, to the hospital room and you're waiting and you're going to become a dad for the first time. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that it's been almost 25 years now, right? And you sit there and go, my goodness, with how the time flies. But neither my wife, Maria, and I, prior to having a child, neither one of us had done babysitting. We weren't baby people. We I don't like to hold babies. And when I have to do a dedication at church, you can see that literally I let the parents hold the baby. If I have to hold the baby, it's awkward. Pretty much the whole church feels like, is Pastor Mark going to drop the kid? Babies weren't my thing, no experience. And then on October 30th, my wife goes into labor. We go in, I have the bags packed. I have got everything, all the supplies ready to go. I'm being the perfect husband alongside of her up until it was getting kind of close to midnight. And then I remember being at my wife's side and going, okay, honey, now push harder now because we don't want to have a Halloween baby. So and then I got the look at that point. That was like the worst thing I could have ever said, right? Like, I'm in control and she's looking at me like, really? Do you want to come down here and do this? And so then even the doctor gave me a look like, dude, that was not a good thing to say. And so that's my one blow it moment. And of course, my daughter didn't listen and ended up being born at 12:13. So we ended up with a Halloween baby. And she was born just barely onto Halloween, October 31st. And I'll never forget the second she was born, because I'm there by my wife's side as she's in a lot of pain and I'm being her focal point and I'm there for her. But now Malin, our daughter's born, and they whisk her to the other side of the room. So now I've got my kid crying over here. I've got my wife in a lot of pain over here. I'm in the middle, and I remember I'm only seconds into being a dad, right? And I literally already was clueless. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, do I go to my kid? Do I stay with my wife? What do I mean, I'm already I don't know what to do as a dad. And then literally I heard the voice of the Lord speak to me, which sounded a lot like my wife, and it coming from her saying, go over and check on our kid and make sure she's okay. And so then I went over, and that's pretty much how parenting has gone. I don't know if I've ever been in the driver's seat. I think at the end of the day, you're doing your best. My wife, I will always give credit, she's the true champion in our home. She has a natural instinct for parenting. And then, and here's what's fun. We have one child. She was born, and we planned to have others. But then my wife, a couple years later, got diagnosed with cancer, and it left us in a place where we weren't able to have any more kids. And so here I am, a parenting guy, speaking on parenting, having had one kid. So that makes me an expert, right? Her nickname's Boo as a result, of course, because she's born on Halloween, and we just have. And I will say, but what I have been blessed by is, and you know this too, being in ministry. I was a youth and family pastor for 12 years, then a senior pastor, and we had a school, a daycare, a lot of the. So in other words, I got to see and work with literally thousands of parents over the last 20, 25 years. And I've just been blessed to see how parents have handled situations and done things. And I've seen parents do things so much better than we did them. So I've kind of gleaned information from those that I really respect and learn from. So that's the beauty of working in the church and working in youth and family ministry. So a lot of what is in the books that I have written, yes, I'm going to have some of my illustrations, some of our stories, but a lot of the stories I share, and of course you have to change the names and so forth, but they're stories of real people in the churches that I have served, and I'm taking kind of from the best that I have seen of how they have handled situations and done things and practical things they've done in their home that just really, so I like to fill these books with practical ideas, examples, things so that people see that these are real people and here's how they handled these situations. And it certainly helped me as well. And I took a lot of the best from others and applied that in our own home. So yeah, that's my journey. And now my kid's 25. She's a nurse, and it's probably not far away that we're going to go into that next phase of life with grandkids, which we are certainly looking forward to.
Well, it seems like there are certainly some things burned into your mind as far as your memories in the hospital room that day, Mark. But I'm wondering about what was going through your mind about spiritual things. I mean, you grew up in a home that was, some spiritual background and so on. But when you were a dad, then what were you thinking? Like, what was your job, or what was going through your mind about now having a spiritual impact on a kid's life?
Correct. I think the first thing that runs in your mind is, I have no clue how to do this. I really do, now, how do I do this? I have the privilege of obviously being raised with great parents, not perfect parents. And I can certainly be glad to share some of that as well. But you sit there and go, there's no one else. It's you, your wife, and you got to figure this out. And I just remember being, I don't know if scared is the right word, but just feeling completely unprepared, not knowing how are we going to now lead this precious child to know, love, and follow Christ. Because at the end of the day, for me, Brian, I mean, that is the most important thing. What do we want most? Because you kind of hold these children, what do I want most for her? Do I want her to be an athlete? Do I want her to be a teacher? Do I want her to have a good education? Do I need to start saving so that for college, which of course we did, wanted her to go to college? What do I want for my child? What do I want to help provide for my child? Those are all important things to them. Hopefully she'll be able to go to college, which she was able to do. Those were things you start thinking about. But for me, there was just, at the end of the day, we all as parents, when you become a parent, we all have the exact same fear. It never leaves. It's something we don't like to talk about. It never changes, no matter how old your kids get. I still have that fear today. It will never go away. It has been there from the second I held her. And again, we hate to talk about it. When we see others go through it, it just is so hard. It's heartbreaking to watch. But it's the fear that we all have. It's the fear that when she drives out of our driveway and goes back to and leaves, you fear it then, which is we don't want anything to happen to our kids, right? We hate to use that. We especially don't want them to die and die before us. And it's this incredible fear, right? That you sit there and there's not a doggone thing we can do about it. We can't prevent it. We don't know when it's going to happen. You sit there, and so you're always worried about it. You're always concerned, and there's nothing we can do. And yet there's one who can, and there's one who did. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever should believe in him shall not perish, but will have everlasting life. And when you now know that, oh my goodness, even if she were to die, she would live. I don't have to fear death for her. She can be rescued from that, delivered from that. Well, I'm sorry, that's more important than getting a college degree. That's more important than anything else, because then I don't have to fear death. And I can, for her, I mean, I still do, but you know what I mean? You can know that it's not going to be the end for her. And that's found through one thing, and that's called faith in Christ. And so now, as a dad, what's most important to me? My goodness, I want my kid to have faith, plain and simple. And because once she has faith, okay, whew, now whatever happens is going to be okay. And you sit there and go. So I guess that was what has always been in driving me, making me the type of dad that I want to be. What's most important to me? It's what I value most. It's what I write into and tell dads. Dad, what's more important in this? Moms, what's more important in this? So Brian, that's probably the heartbeat behind, and then what is it that then leads our kids to have faith? And that's what this book kind of gets into, is how can we help lead our kids to have faith in Christ so that death is not the end for them.
Okay, so wanting our child to have faith, from the time they're babies, that we want them to grow into that time when they will accept the Lord Jesus Christ as their personal Savior is our job as parents, is so important to us. And Mark, certainly you grew up with that. You grew up in a home where that was normal, and you went on to pastor. But along the way as well, you started to really become convinced that faith at home was important. Not just faith, but faith at home. So give us a bit of, I suppose, the elevator speech of why faith at home. Why not just faith at church or faith in general, but why is faith at home so important?
Well, because here's the deal, and we'll get into the stats in the future episodes as well to reveal this. But at the end of the day, the home is where life makes up its mind. The home is the primary place. I don't know where we got this wrong. You can kind of sometimes say, like if you were to come across someone, you're walking on the street and you see someone maybe wearing a cross necklace or something, and if you were to go up to them and say, "Are you a Christian?" and they say yes, or let's just say, flip it around. Somebody comes to you and maybe you're wearing a cross or something, and they just kind of say, "By the way, are you a Christian?" And of course, our answer would be yes. And then they'd say, "Well, I got it. Where do you go to connect with God? Because I'm looking to connect with, where would you go to connect with God?" Now, what are most people's answer is going to be to that? We're probably going to name our church. I connect with God at the Log Church. I connect with God here. And that's great. Don't get me wrong. You should connect with God at church. But that means you only are connecting with God once a week, maybe once every other week. The answer we don't give is, I connect with God at home. I mean, just think about the difference of how that even, what that implies, what that means. When you say you're connecting with God at church, that's a place. When it's connecting with God at home, now wait a second, that means you're now living in a relationship with God. You're not just going to church. And that's where I think a lot of times have gotten faith wrong, is we've made it about a ritual, about going to church, doing church, and we haven't moved it into relationship. And imagine the difference because if we keep Jesus at church, then we can live a different way at home, and we can act a different way, behave a different way. And then we go to church and we dress the part, act the part, behave the part, kind of do that. But wait a second, that's not a relationship then. That's just doing church. And when our kids are raised in an environment where that's what they see, then they start to think Christianity is just about organized religion, or it's just about church. And they're missing out on it being a relationship. And so I just truly believe a home needs to be, sorry, long answer. This is not the elevator answer you were looking for. Let me make it quick. Faith at home is simply home. I truly believe a home is called to be the primary place where we connect with God, and parents are to be the primary influences in the lives of their children and children's children. So that's the short answer. Home, primary place, because that changes everything. Because if you bring Christ into your home, that's going to impact what you watch on TV. That's going to be, he's now a part of your life. You're not just doing church.
And again, we're going to get into some of this stuff in more detail as we go on through these sessions, and some very practical ideas. But Mark, this wasn't just your idea. This is from Deuteronomy chapter 6 and Joshua chapter 24 and many other Psalms. And, really it's all throughout the Old Testament and all throughout the Bible. One of the verses, Mark, that you point to in your book is John 8:44. And in this verse, it says that Satan is the father of lies. And if faith at home is so important, then it seems that Satan has been very active in spreading lies and lots of deceptions in our culture in general, for sure, but even with regard to faith at home. He's whispering things into our ears, trying to get us to buy the lie and getting us to believe something. It's just not true, but we tend to be drawn into those things. So as a dad, these are some of the things that I might tend to believe, and I need to confront those lies with the truth of Scripture and know the truth about these things. So Mark, let me run a few of these lies past you that I think are gaining hold in our day and age, in our culture, in our homes, and just get your response on them. First one, Mark, goes something like this. In the grand scheme of things and all the busyness and so on, is it really that important? Like, where does it rank? And I've got a lot of priorities in life, a lot of things I need to be doing. How important is faith at home?
Well, we're actually seeing the results of how that lie is actually, because it is a lie many have fallen for. And what we're seeing is right now, 18 to 29-year-olds are leaving Christianity at an all-time high rate. I mean, these are kids that were raised in the church, going to church, put into church programs and so forth, but they are leaving their Christian faith altogether, walking away from it at one of the highest rates we've ever seen. And the primary reason why they're walking away from the faith, and studies have been done and the questions have been asked, is the undertone of their answers is, the current kind of running through their answers is hypocrisy. They think Christianity is hypocritical because for many of them, and you will see this in future episodes, and it's in the book as well as all the statistics that show that many have not experienced faith at home. They have only experienced faith at church. And so then when it's just something you do, they see it as something that you just act one way, dress one way, behave one way, talk one way at church, and it's not being lived at home, not being talked about at home, well, then they end up walking away from the faith later in life saying, if that's what Christianity is, I don't want anything to do with that. And they're actually on a quest. They're looking for something more. They're looking for deeper spirituality. They're looking for something, and that's because Christianity was always supposed to be more. It was meant to be a relationship that's 24/7. That's lived. So literally, it's like they're walking away from the faith because they didn't get faith at home and they're wanting faith at home. So one of the things that's actually on the other side of things is now these 18 to 29-year-olds are becoming parents, and guess what they are drawn to? They're not drawn to going back to church, but they're very interested in the idea of faith at home because they didn't experience that in their home, and they want to do it differently than how their parents raised them. They're not saying their parents are horrible, but they're saying, I want to do it differently. And so many of that age is now attracted to faith at home because they missed out on it and they don't want to be a hypocrite themselves, or they don't want to have that same hypocritical kind of lifestyle. So it is something that's why it's so it is critically important. And I truly believe, Satan's made that. He really knows what he's doing to try to get Christ and Christ-like living out of the home. He knows what he's up to there, but it's a chance for us to change that now.
Here's another one. And I've certainly felt the pinch of this. The longer I'm a dad, the more I'm aware of my own mistakes and the ways that I've messed up and blown it. But what would you say about the lie that Satan would whisper and says, you're just too messed up, or your family is just too messed up? Like your dad struggled with some of those things earlier on and he turned that around. But what do you say to those who feel like they have just messed up too much?
Yeah, that is, first of all, Rob Reno wrote a great book called It's Never Too Late. And it's to really kind of address that don't ever give up on your kids. And don't ever think you can't turn it around. I mean, I did not grow up in the perfect home. It looked like it. I mean, my dad was a camp director. My mom was this great Christian. She worked at this. We were raised at this Bible camp, and he was always with kids. And dad was this played guitar, he did skits. I mean, he was this upfront presence that everybody loved. My dad's nickname was Uncle Arlie. Everybody loved Uncle Arlie. Uncle Arlie would come to camp and they'd flock, and my dad was just kind of the centerpiece of this camp. And but at home, not so much in the summer, but during the off season, the other 9 months, my dad had a drinking problem, and he was an alcoholic. He was a person that when he started, if he had one drink, he wasn't going to stop until he pretty much passed out in a recliner. And that was, and then I remember many times I'd be at a football game with some friends or something like that, and I'd say, hey, my friends want to come over. I'd call mom, and she'd be like, no, you can't bring your friends over to the house because of dad. And I mean, I experienced the hypocrisy in my own home of this. And so, and I too, I'm not a perfect dad. I mean, if you want, you could probably interview my kid and she will give you a whole list of, hey, these are some things that, that, and so we all fall short, right? We all make mistakes. We all wish, we look back at life and go, man, if I could do that over again, I would do that differently. So I want to be clear here. Faith at home is not about being perfect. We're not going to be perfect, but it gives us an opportunity to be better, to do better, to look at how we can, and because God wants to, I mean, we'll see this in Deuteronomy 6, his ways are so that it may go well with us. It doesn't mean it will be easy. There's two different words there. And so the original word is so that it may be well with you as a family. And so it's not going to be easy. But he wants to, and then he wants to put us on a trajectory of increasing in wellness. So if you want things to go well, and be on a trajectory of increasing and getting, it's not a word, but getting getting more, man, that's what faith at home parenting is all about, is starting where you're at and a new trajectory, starting to get well and working to get more and more well. And I hope I'm a better person. I hope my daughter is seeing me get well. I hope she's seeing, and I hope we're on a similar trajectory of growing in wellness.
Okay, here's one that's a little bit similar, Mark. How about the lie that says it's just too late? Maybe it's because we have messed up, or whatever the reason might be, or maybe that we came to faith later in life and the kids are grown up, and Satan just whispers into our ear and says, hey, don't bother about it. It's just too late. What would you say to that?
Yeah, and here's what was cool with my dad. To finish out that story, I remember I came home from college, and I was the one that he had to confront him, and because I was the youngest, and so when I left, it was just my mom and dad, and his drinking got a little worse, and I was the one that had to say, Dad, if you don't go in and get help, we're actually going to be taking mom, and she's going to be living with my sisters, or she's going to be, and
Wow.
you need to get help. And he needed to tell the people at they worked at the camp for the board there, and he did. He went in and got help and got diagnosed with anxiety. This was many years ago when no one knew what anxiety was. Got put on medication for that, and it was an amazing turnaround. He never smoked again, and he never touched a drink again. And I had a different dad for the next 15 years, 12 to 15 years before he passed away. And so I saw him increase in wellness. I saw him change. And so, and I think there is power when our kids can watch us change and watch us be different and watch us grow. And that's what you'll hear a lot in this book too, is this isn't all about doing stuff with our kids. It's also going to examine how we're just doing life ourselves, and our kids being able to watch us grow in our faith, watch us change, watch us evolve. And that sets an example for them as well. So yeah, don't fall for those lies from Satan. It's never too late. I mean, there's just, even if your kids are now in their 30s, you're still mom, you're still dad, you're still the primary influence in their life. They're still watching, they're still learning from you. They're still paying attention to who you are and what you're doing. And so you'll always be that huge influence in their life.
Mark, I've heard you speak about your dad with great love and respect many times before. Even though he made some mistakes, he didn't consider it too late, and he turned things around, and you had some great years with your dad. But, there are a lot who might be watching this today and they're thinking, maybe they've even been a believer for many years and they think it's too late, or there's too much water under the bridge, or some things have happened. It could be that God has planted some ideas in your mind about some things that need to change in your life as a parent. And it can start with that, and it's never too late. There's always an opportunity to reach even your adult children, and it may begin with a change in your life. Well, Mark, here's another lie that Satan uses. Satan may say, well, it's too difficult, it's too tough. Are you talking about family devotions where we all sit down together and, I just don't know what to do? What do you say to those who might decide or buy into the lie that it's just too difficult?
Well, you know what? And that is true. I mean, it's crazy how, because we start thinking of things like, do I have to teach my kids? Because that's what we've seen. Do I have to become like a Sunday school teacher? Do I have to memorize a bunch of stuff? Do I have to, again, we have this misunderstanding that faith is something you teach. It's not. Faith is caught more than it's taught. Faith is it's I remember using for a while I don't know if it was the best analogy in the world, but it's kind of like a cold. And when my kid would go to school, get a cold, and come home with the cold, well, you know what was happening. It was just a matter of time. I'd have the cold, then my wife would have a cold. When it was brought into the home, everyone got it. And that's a little bit of an analogy to what faith is. When faith is actually being lived out, talked about, expressed, just when it's just a lifestyle, everyone kind of starts to catch it then in the home. It's not about what you have to teach. It's caught more. It's lived out. And so it's a lifestyle. So what you'll see is now there are some things that we can do that to help us understand faith more, understand God and his ways. And we want to learn about how to live our lives in the way God has called us to, so that so that it will go well with you. Well, I kind of want to learn more about how I could have life go well, how my marriage could go well, how my relationship with my kid could go well, with my family. I want this thing called wellness that will even lead through death to eternal life. That's the ultimate place of wellness, where there is no pain, no suffering, no. Okay, so we should be a people that kind of want to learn about this, right? We want to understand it better. I want to know, okay, how do I handle this situation in a way so that we will be well? And so it's not this arduous responsibility. It's certainly not something you do 1 hour a week and say, now you check the box, we did that. It's not about having a perfect hour where everyone's sitting at the kitchen table with the candle burning and the Bible open in a kumbaya moment where everyone's going to behave and act. That I just want you to know that would never happen in my family growing up. It was just, and again, I was a little bit blessed to be raised at camp. It's a lifestyle. And so we need to help people get past that. Satan is trying to make it look like you have to, it's like an education, and you need a master's degree, and you need to, and what the biggest fear, I think that attached to this lie is when people start to think, he starts to then say, well, you know what's going to happen? Your kids are going to ask questions that you're not going to be able to answer. Well, exactly.
Yeah.
I have questions still. I mean, it's not about the answer. It's about creating an environment where those questions can be asked. And then we got to try to look together and say, you know what, that's a really good question. We're gonna have to try to figure out I wonder what God does think about that. I wonder why. And it's about us growing together. So it's not about having all the answers. It's about creating an environment where we can ask questions and just keep growing in our faith. So yeah, we got to get past that hurdle or that lie that Satan throws at us a lot.
Yeah, it's not about having all the answers, and actually the fun part can be is to throw the questions back at them when they get a little bit older. I mean, just last night we were talking with the kids, and they surfaced the question of whether or not Jesus could have sinned. And I've had some, theological training, so I lobbed some questions into that to try and mess with their brains and see if they could cause it to explode or something like that. But we don't need to have all the answers, and we certainly don't have all the answers. But we can search some of those things together with our kids, and that can be a lot of fun. Mark, we've got a lot that we want to talk about here on this Faith at Home journey, and I wonder if you can give us a bit of a snapshot about where we're headed and what you mean by a home makeover.
Well, obviously, if we want the end goal, start with the end in mind. Stephen Covey principle. End goal is pretty simple. I want the home, want to help people. This book was written to essentially help parents establish their home as the primary place where faith is being lived, nurtured, discussed, talked about, so that so Christ is residing in their home with them, so that it may go well with them. And I want to help establish parents as the primary influence in the lives of their children's faith journey, so that children know that that mom and dad are the ones that I can turn to and talk to about faith in my own home. I don't have to wait for church. I don't have to wait. So then I'm just a practical person. How do we do that? How do we make home primary place? How do we make parents the primary influence? And so what you're going to see is, as we take this journey together, is it's going to be a little bit of kind of laying a biblical foundation that shows us how. So we pull from the Bible some very specific things, because the Bible has given us some things as a roadmap to use so that it may go well with us. And then attaching to it then practical ways that work today, that other parents have used, other parents have done, that I've learned from, and so that it's filled with biblical wisdom and that it's filled with practical application, so that then it just becomes, oh, I now see it, I now got it. And not every idea is going to work for every set of parents. But there's hopefully going to be so much that no matter where you're at, you're going to have some takeaways that you can say, now that could work in our fault, or that's something we need to do. So that's kind of what this journey is going to be about, a good biblical foundation. These are not my ideas. And by the way, Faith at Home, don't give me credit for it. Don't attach my name to it. I didn't come up with it. It's in the Bible. It was originally there. You'll see that. Faith at Home was God's idea, not mine. And so it's really it's been there this whole time. It's how it's supposed to be. And so then it gives us not only that it's supposed to be that way, but then the Bible shows us how, and we're going to glean from that and attach to it practical ideas. So it's going to be a real fun journey for us to take. And I've enjoyed having the opportunity. Here's the fun with Faith at Home. I've been to 11 different countries, and a lot of countries that doesn't even speak our language. The book Faith Begins at Home has been translated into 6 different languages. And wherever I've gone, I've not changed the approach. I haven't changed the parenting seminar. I haven't changed the book. It is the same ideas. It's the same. And that's because the Bible works everywhere. It's not just a US thing. It's just out of Canada thing. These principles and this stuff apply no matter where you live, no matter what size your family is, no matter what your background is, no matter what. This is just because it's just solid biblical stuff and practical ideas that can work for anyone.
Well, this has been great, Mark. And we're going to be talking some more about this in the sessions to come. But I do want to touch on this and ask you one final question. But do you mean then that this is all about faith at home? And not at all about the church? What's the church's role in all of this?
Well, again, I hope, thanks for that question, the role of the church is to be a lifelong partner, to equip, to motivate, empower, equip, inspire, challenge, convict, instill this value of faith at home. And of course, that is our role. We got a huge role to play. We want to help, and that's a big part of who the church that I'm at and the churches that we work with across the world. That's what they're now looking at, is how do we, as a church, help establish the home as primary place? How do we, through the programs of the church, through men's ministry, equip men to be godly men at home? Women's ministry, help women be godly women in the home? How does every ministry of the church work together to kind of equip the home to be primary and parents as primary influence? And so that's the role of the church. It's got a big role to play. And actually, this pandemic has actually given us an even greater opportunity, and it kind of forced the church and people to become faith at home focused on both sides, because they can't go to church anymore. Church closed its door, and the church had, in order to keep doing what it had to do, it had to figure out ways to bring Christ and Christ-like living into the home. So this pandemic has actually been a good thing for faith at home. And now what we want to do is make sure that as this pandemic slowly starts to go, that we don't go back to outsourcing it to the church. And we want to maintain faith at home and make it even stronger. And so churches will maintain this as well as a part of how they do discipleship. Because for me, discipleship is not true discipleship if we're not actually getting people to live it in their own home.
Well, that about does it for us today. Please join us again in the next session as we talk about the home makeover. And we're going to get down to the brass tacks, as they say, about beginning the construction and remaking what our home looks like with regards to faith. In the sessions to come, we will touch on parent makeover, a child makeover, grandparents, extended family, even a church makeover. So please join us for that. This information has been based on Mark Holman's book, Faith Begins at Home. And if you don't have a copy of the book, please get one. You'll find that there's a lot more information available in the book, such as makeover tips and some family activities and a group discussion guide, things that will just add to our time together, and you can take some of these things and apply them even further. My name is Brian Sewart, and Mark Holman has been our special guest as we talk about a home makeover. For more information about Faith at Home Ministries, please see our website at faithathome.com.